Hi, my name is Silas Njugona and I'm living the Mavuno full life. Welcome to my story. How I got to Mavuno is a long story. But let me take you way back from the beginning, where my story started. First of all, you need to realize that I got saved when getting saved was getting saved.
Getting saved.
Yes. I got saved when I was pretty young, around 19 years. And when I look back at my life, my Christian life, I think the biggest problem I have is that the concept I got when I got saved was not the right one. Whoever introduced me to this Christianity, they didn't tell me the cardinal principle. You know, the cardinal principle, which for now I can say is grace and love. But when I got saved, the first impression I got was about law, doing this, doing that. And as a new Christian, there are so many things that I didn't understand. I used to do them just because I'm required to do them, with a lot of struggles, with a lot of hard work. And
Like what? Like what now?
Fasting. Fasting was I learned fasting the hard way. Until right now, I still have a struggle with fasting because of the first experience I had. When I got saved, we used to have a week. Every month we used to have a week. That week of the month, we used to fast and pray for the nation. Now, that announcement would be made on the pulpit. You know, whatever the service leaders would say, the coming week we are fasting and praying for the nation. But as a new Christian, no one told me what fasting entails. And you know, some of these things, when they are said on the pulpit, it requires context, and context was not given. So when they said fasting, me, I assumed fasting is you don't eat, you don't drink, you are like that for the period of time. Now, you see, 7 days. So my first experience of fasting, I fasted for 7 days without eating and without drinking.
So how come you're not dead? You're here.
I know, but sometimes in our ignorance, I think God is able to just let you be. Because I'm sure if I did it right now, maybe there will be serious implications on my health. And mark you, these 7 days when I was fasting, it's not that I was sitting. I used to walk to church every day, like 30 minutes walk to and fro. 30 minutes to, 30 minutes from. The other thing is, I used to live in the village. You know, village is not like town. Villages, you have to do something. You have to pick something. You have to do this and that. The reason I was disappointed is I remember there was a time I was interacting with one of the pastor's kid. Now my pastor's kid. And now it was a fasting week. And then she offered me tea and bread. So I was like, are we not supposed to be fasting?
At the pastor's house.
In church.
In church.
In church, yes, in church.
In church.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was one thing. So my Christianity started on the wrong basis. So it used to be a lot of me, my hard work. But then I was very holy. Not very holy. Not like now. I was holy because I was full of fear. I always imagined that if I did something wrong, not even do, if I thought something wrong, God somehow will punish me in a way I don't know. I didn't want to test fate. So over a period of time, I found this thing, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. Is there anything else that I can do with my Christianity?
My name is Mudhoni Muturi. I am living the Mavuno full life, and this is my story. I actually did Mizizi while in another church. I was at the Bucklands Baptist Church, and I did Mizizi while there, and I loved it. And I really, really wanted to get other people to do Mizizi. I really did not do it because of Mavuno. I didn't know about Mavuno. And I heard that Mizizi was going to prison. Like literally, Mizizi was being taken to prison. So I asked if I could join that group, and I was allowed to. So I met this group called Freedom Behind Bars, and we would go to prison and take, the experience, the Mizizi experience, transformation to prison. And we'd, go in the mornings on Saturday from 9 to 1, and then we'd sit and debrief, and before long it was almost 5 o'clock, and there was a Saturday evening service, and they'd invite me and I'd go, and then the following morning on Sunday I go to church because for me, Mavuno was social justice. It was dealing with things in the community, which I so loved. I really loved doing that. So I joined Mavuno through Freedom Behind Bars. I was very cynical about church. I had, had an experience that made me not really want to be too engaged with church. I am from a church family. My father is a reverend, and I enjoyed, going to different churches every now and then, because when I was growing up, he was a treasurer, a national treasurer of a big church, and we'd go to different churches almost every Sunday. And that was fun. Part of being in a pastor's family is, you learn to be a Sunday school teacher, a choir master, a preacher. But for me, it was never a decision that I had made. It was proximity, So it was only natural that I would know what to say in CU, or know cool reggae songs in school. And because of knowing nice Christian things to do, I was made a CU chair lady. And after, I always had these two lives, where one, there was the face of church where I would need to be the Sunday school teacher or the praise and worship leader and something else, and it came very naturally. And that would happen even on a Friday evening from 7 to 9, and then at 10 p.m. we hang out with other pastors' children and smoke weed or whatever. And
Hi, I'm Zachary Kamau, living Mavuno's full life. I had relocated from Mombasa, having worked in Mombasa for some time. How I got to Mombasa, I was working in a media house. I'd been deployed to Mombasa for some time. And had quit my job, relocated to Nairobi, and was struggling fairly well. And this friend, I had met him in Mombasa, and he referred me to this church. He told me, I had mentioned that I didn't like church. Was a bit boring. I would switch off the moment I went into church, so I wasn't in church for a very long time. So he told me, this church is different. This one, you won't switch off. But that's not where my story starts. My story starts way back. When my dad died, just out of campus, so just had finished campus, not even graduated. My dad passed on, and I went through a lot of financial difficulty, serious financial difficulty. So through relative networks, I was able to get a job with a company selling perfume. It was hard work. It is the hardest thing. So I started out with a backpack. And one time I walked into a store, I was told, we don't accept things from hawkers. And I was very offended. I was a graduate. I was being branded a hawker. I took offense, by the way. So I went and rebranded. I got smarter looking attire and got myself a briefcase. It had a faulty mechanism for opening. It was a code briefcase. So the rebranding did help. I was facing less resistance. I remember one experience where, because this briefcase was faulty, you go to a client, pitch, introduce yourself. Then they'd ask to see your samples. You place your bag on the table. You go for the lock system, turn the code, or act like you're turning the code because you know it doesn't work. And then you try to open the back. It fails to open in the middle of client, so you are freezing. You struggle with it. You fidget. Then you excuse yourself and say, I'll come back shortly. I actually did for 3 months. It feels like 30 years. It was hard. Eventually, because I was still looking, I got a job with a media house, and I was sent to Mombasa. I did fairly well, but I also got habits, like drinking alcohol. And by the time I left Mombasa, it was becoming serious. Now I know I was in the second stage of alcoholism. And since I left abruptly, with a warning, though I had been very financially savvy, people used to come to me for financial advice. I had done very well in the stock market, made money. I had put aside money for emergency. I was in investment groups, quite a number. I had saved up quite a bit of money, by the way, when you think about it. So when I relocated and I was transitioning, I was depleting my funds. So eventually I started struggling because after 6 months I was running out of cash. I was disposing of my liquid assets and I started borrowing cash because at the same time I was trying to maintain a certain kind of lifestyle that I was used to, the kind of circle of friends that I had. And my alcohol problem was getting out of hand. So at that point in time, that's when I met this friend of mine. One of the things that had happened along the way is that I was job hopping. Literally, I would be in a company for 2 months or 2 weeks, depending, and I'd be out consistently for a period of about 3 years. By the time I was done, I had gone through about 10 or 11 organizations. So when I was into Mavuno, I had been to church for like on and off for about 15 years minimum. I was expectant because I had tried everything. I had tried the secret, positive thinking, the works. I tried everything that would work, and I was seeing everyone else was doing fairly well except for me, and I wasn't getting why.
You tried channeling the universe, it didn't work.
Yes, I had. In fact, I had written myself a check of 3 million. 3 million. I had a checkbook, very nice check, but I wrote myself a check of 3 million and put it in my wallet. And it got stored there because it stayed there for forever, and I never got the 3 million. In fact, I almost got a debt of 3 million in that process. I was just going through life, and I didn't feel like it was going too badly. I was just going through a rough patch like people do. I had been through a good patch, and then I'd be out. But this one never seemed to stop. I was getting into debt. I owed almost everyone. I was a treasurer in Chama. I had gone and withdrawn money from the bank to pay off some debt. I had been found out. I had been kicked out the Chama very disgracefully. So I was dealing with shame. I was in financial distress. I was sick. I was an alcoholic, basically. I was angry and bitter. I used to be very edgy and quick to anger.
So, two things happened. Now, the questions I was asking myself, and then at that time, the Mavuno Worship Project had just launched, and it was playing on TV a lot of times. And I love live music, and the way it was recorded live music, I was attracted. I decided, well, okay. First of all, I told my guys in the previous church, I told them, by the way, I'll be going around this Nairobi, checking out churches. If I don't find somewhere I can fit, I'll be back. Mtaniona hapa. But if you don't see me back, consider this as my goodbyes.
It was real.
Yes. Peace. So, the first church I went to, actually, it was Mavuno. I didn't even go round. I just went to Mavuno one Sunday at Bellevue. And I think the sermon that time was about players of the Bible. After I joined, it was around July, I think, and there was a season of Mizizi in August. So, they said about this program of a 10 weeks program and stuff. But because I didn't have friends in church, I thought maybe if I join this class, which is a smaller group, I might be having people to talk with after church. So I signed, and I started doing Mizizi. But now, because of the way it starts, I was a bit skeptical because I was used to the deep stuff, the deep books of the Bible, the deep stories, and then the first question is about who is God. I thought I knew God, and I thought I knew how God operates. But now, looking back, that was the same problem I had with Christianity because I didn't understand how God operated. So, the first, I remember even our facilitator I didn't know then, but now I can tell. He used to see behind my, it's funny because...
Veil.
Yes, he could see it. And sometimes you'd ask a question like, which sins are you struggling with? And my answer would be, I think I've dealt with all these sins, I've dealt with them.
I don't have sin.
I'm not struggling with these things. But it's funny because you guys normally, when you call me normal day Pharisees, Pharisee, that's what
we call you.
Yes.
Modern day Pharisee.
Which is a bit offensive, but yeah.
That's what you are.
Yes, that was what I was. And when I went to class and I was in this class with guys who are not even saved at that time, and I was wondering, what am I doing here really? We are talking about the basics of the Bible. I'm the guy who could quote the Bible from cover to cover. If you ask me a verse in the Bible, I'll just tell you what it is. So you take me back to the basics of I no longer, it's not me who lives. I think Christ lives in me and the life. Those are the basic Christian. Can you talk about the
Deep stuff.
The deep stuff.
For you, deep stuff would be what?
I don't know. I thought deep stuff was, preaching a sermon, and everyone is shaking their heads, like, yeah, huyo mse ako juu. It's not about the daily struggles people are having or what God has done. I was looking for the big things, big miracles. If you tell me that you are drinking and now you are not drinking,
It's not a big deal.
because for me, by the way, the reason it was not a big deal is when I got saved. Yesterday I was smoking. I actually decided to get not married. I decided to get saved when I was drunk.
Well, high.
I went, when someone dies, we went to someone who had died, and there was a preacher in that preaching. What do you call that in English?
Called
Mombolezi. You know those
Mombolezi,
Mombolezi?
yes.
There was a preacher who was preaching.
Like
and-
a preparation.
Yes, and it was very scary. Yeah? If you don't get saved, you shall go to hell. I was drunk. So, and I remember I had cigarettes in my pocket. So, I had a friend of mine, my former schoolmates. We were buddies, by the way. So, he also listened to the same sermon. And then we met afterwards, and I started telling him, by the way, hey, you're a preacher. Me, I'm a bit scared. I think I'll get saved. And he told me the same thing, by the way. So then we decided there was a kesha. I can't remember which day of the week it was, but there was a kesha on Friday. So now we decided we'll go on Friday and get saved. So the cigarettes I had, I gave a buddy of mine. Hakuna kupoteza. I gave the guy, and I decided, you know what? I'm not smoking anymore, and I'm not drinking alcohol anymore. And I went home. I stayed at home for like 2 days. I think it was too much for me now thinking about getting saved, thinking all about my life, the things I'm going to live. So I decided to just stay 2 days without talking to anybody they can change my mind. So I decided from there on, I'm not smoking, I'm not taking alcohol and stuff. For 2 days I was in-house, just thinking about it. Then Friday came, we went to church, and we got saved. The hard work now began.
For me, church was the place where my father worked. What made me cynical? After many years of church, because my father was the national treasurer, but he was still working in a good position, I'd say. So we actually did live a very good life. So Saturdays would be about going to play golf and do swimming, and then Sundays would be going to church. Saturday evening or Friday night would be a different story. After a long time, because he was still working and earning good money and giving us a very good life and dining in good places and going to different hotels and so on, he quit his job to be a full-time minister. It wasn't a surprise because it had been our lives on Sundays and on Saturdays, and probably in the evenings on weekdays he'd be having us wait in the cars is having an evening meeting. So the difference was we realized our lives would change in some way. We would have to compromise a few things, but we were not too worried because he had already started a church and he had invested in that church, like many other churches that he had invested in and many people's lives that he had invested in. But what we didn't expect, or what I would never have seen coming, is one day when a few months down the line, the deacons, decided that he was no longer the pastor of that church, and he walked away, and we followed him, and that meant starting again. But this time, those resources were not there. So it was a few years of tough times, very, very tough times. And every time we'd have a tough time, I'd think this is because of church people. If we don't have something, it's because of church people. Yeah. And slowly that anger got to God because he could have prevented it. He could have made the experience easier. Having seen him start churches with his own money over all the years of my life, and then seeing his final one and him being kicked out, didn't seem right. So I just decided I'd be a good person you know. I would help society because I felt, you know, people watch the news but they don't do anything about it. So when I found a church that is literally going to prisons to help with transformation, that looked different. And that I was engaging with the social justice, not the church. And that's why when I was coming in the evening, it was to a hangout, not to a church, because then I'd go to church on Sunday if I wanted to, or go to the pub on Sunday. But it was quite different. It was very different because I had never met a church where we could talk about our issues on the table. You know, church had to be this place where I am this person and then I am another person outside church. But Mavuno and Mizizi and the people there, you know, and my friends who we get to meet every Wednesday. And when we meet on Wednesday, it's not that now we are reading Romans 5 or Ecclesiastes 2, but we are talking
stuff.
about what are you going through right now? What have you been through this week? And we lay it bare. We lay it bare on the table, and that's what really attracted me to Mavuno. Of course, for about a year, I was still going to church on Sunday until slowly I realized I'm coming to Mavuno more. And I appreciate so much what many churches are doing, and they're reaching out to many people. But Mavuno helped me deal with this issue of anger, of bitterness against the church. And allowed me to just be. Because another thing, growing up as a pastor's kid, there was so much expectation from society. I could not measure up to the expectations that I thought people had of me. But when I came to Mavuno, that expectation was not there. It was that, oh, okay, so what are you going through? And for some reason, I was able to say, I'm struggling to stop smoking. And it was okay. Like, I was in many circles, but I was not able to just say I'm struggling to stop smoking because this is a place where we just talk about our issues, our real issues. I actually just came one day and said, I'm unable to stop. And then they were like, what? I'm unable to stop smoking. I can't quit. And I didn't even think I was addicted. So we were able to, you know, my friends would call me every week. And, you know, within the same group, I'd have people calling me during the week and asking me, okay, how many down? 15.
Tell us about your how
Awesome.
stop smoking.
They didn't judge me at all. That is for starters. They didn't judge me. It was okay. And they were saying, let's deal with this together. If you really want to stop, let us help us know how is it that we can support you. And I didn't even know the answer to that question, but they continue calling me and asking me how many down, how are you doing this week? And when I was up again to 20, it was okay. When I was down to 5, it was okay. And one day, one of the pastors in our group, Pastor Mark Ndoati, you know, was going on a mission to Tanzania. Was it Tanzania?
Yes.
He was going on a mission to Tanzania, and he asked what he could do for me. So I told him, I've been thinking of a smoking patch. So he literally walked me through town. The whole of town, like for 3 hours, our heels were hot.
That's a pastor.
Yes, greenhouse pastor. He is a pastor.
didn't pray
at
for you?
Mavuno. No, he didn't pray for me. He asked me, how would you like me to help you? And I told him, I want to look for a smoking patch. And he walked with me for 3 hours in town until we got someone who said, we will order one for you in 3 days. And he left. You know, before he left, he actually said, I hope this works, but if it doesn't, we'll keep trying. And he didn't you know, he was away for 6 months, and he didn't get to know that I never went back for that patch, because I learned that every addiction actually has a root cause. And my root cause was just acceptance. I wanted to be just accepted for me, no expectations, no nothing, and I had gotten that. So once that was sorted, I realized I didn't need the smoking patch, and it's, you know, it's been good so far.
This friend just invited me to church. Casually, it was not like I told him I'm looking for God. We just had conversation about church, and I said how I find church a bit boring, and he told me, why don't you try this one? It's different. I came and I was blown away. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe this wasn't like church. It was well done. The decor was unbelievable. There was a theme. The sermon was relevant, practical, applicable. You could actually step out, and the sermon is being applied immediately after church. There are people waiting for you. You have been told you need to sign up your house help for NHIF. people from NHIF are outside church waiting to sign people up. I had never seen that. I had never thought in my life it was actually possible to do that. And so in my heart I said, this is it. This is what church ought to be. It's practical and it's solving real problems in the real world. Basically, Mrs. was introduced as an experience that allows you to connect with God, with God's people, and with your purpose. And for me, purpose felt like what I really needed to find. I really needed to find my purpose quickly because the world wasn't making a lot of sense. But I wasn't able to do Mrs. for some time, for like a year and a half, because I was broke. I was in debt. I was barely being able to meet my needs. But eventually, after 2 years, I actually managed to go through. I got a job with another media house, a steady income, so I was able to pay for it. And I was really eager to find my purpose. The experience was very interesting, not what I would expect out of a church. And it was very open. It was safe. You could share your opinion in a safe environment. It was dealing with relevant issues that I personally was concerned about, the Word of God. And it was not judgmental because everyone else was in the same journey as I was, trying to find God. But I remember I kept pestering the facilitator and my Mizizi class members about purpose, because I kept asking them, so why did God create me? Where in the Bible does God say why he created me personally? I don't seem to find the answer why. And the question did linger. But then we got to the issue of money, and I always considered myself as financially savvy, a pro as far as finances work. People used to come to me for financial advice. And Pastor, I am taught money so radically differently. I'd never had money being taught that way. I was so convicted. I was literally transformed from the person I used to be, and I became a new person. Now I realize the truth about God and about money, because I actually didn't think God cared about money. I thought he only cared about the money that you tithe. I never tithed or consciously given money in church. I thought, well, you give church money to church and pastor just squander your money. And for the first time I understood that God was not just interested in the 10%, he was actually interested in the whole money, in all of my life, in all of my struggles, in all of my pain, in all of my bitterness, in all of my anger, in all of me. And I'd never known that. So it's like I died and was born again as a new person. I was no longer ashamed of who I was, and I was not as bitter with the world. I was not as angry. And my financial mess gradually started being resolved. Eventually, I had to find a ministry, so I'm bold and I'm daring, so I was looking for something dangerous, like taking the word of God to prison. And it was the hardest thing. It was harder than selling perfume. It was really hard. I was a very young Christian. I was very toddler. I didn't know the Bible. I had never read the Bible before, at least not relevantly. I used to mock people about things in the Bible, about the Samaritan woman, the kind of relationship she had with Jesus. And I didn't know anything about the Bible. And so I took the word of God to prison. I don't know the Bible. And I suddenly found myself leading a class, and I have to answer questions about who God is, about things in the Bible that I never read and don't make sense. It was really hard. It was so hard, it almost broke me. But I didn't know that God was actually preparing me for my purpose, to take that experience and apply it in an area where no one else had done. I was being prepared, my stamina was being built to prepare me to launch my own program, which is an entrepreneurial literacy program.
I went through Mizizi. I still struggled with all these lessons. Even with the facilitator, when you had my thinking, first of all, you had to hear how many years has this guy been saved. If it's
Your
lesser than your years,
Your experience of salvation.
yes. If they have been saved for less years than you, of course, you
They
block
have no
you block them.
authority
Yeah, they
over
don't
them.
have an authority over you. So that was the first thing. When we went for the retreat, I remember Pastor Njoro. He was the one now praying for us. I can't remember. Either he prayed about religion or something I was holding in my heart. But I remember that night we were at Lukenya. I actually cried. I've never cried for things of God. That night I cried and I felt like something left. You know, all these bondages, all these mindset, all these Pharisee, whatever, they left. And now I was able to even to, cause initially I never used to show my feelings, even for Christianity. I never used to show them, but now I was willing even to show them before people, crying and tearing.
Publicly.
Yes. So I think that's when I got my freedom on the retreat. That's when now I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this thing on my own. If God cannot help me to live this life, then it's not worth it. Because I had done it myself, and cause the first thing I got, it's like I was not even allowed to make a mistake. You realize even I was willing to stop smoking before I get saved. It's because I didn't want to make mistakes. Because the impression I got, if you make a mistake with God, you are done. So I carried that for like 10 years. And now it was hard. It was hard.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went through Mizizi and joined the life group.
Yes.
So what changed?
Now after that, now I could go to LG and share my weaknesses, my fears. Initially, I used to hide them in testimonies. I don't know whether you know about testimonies.
No,
Every time you meet a brother, you have to say, God has been with me.
how God has been faithful.
And you have not heard from him for the
Things
whole
I
period.
find very offensive
Yes.
personally.
By the way, it was all a lie, because every time you will never hear a person giving a testimony of how things are bad. It's all about God has been good. He has, amenionekania, all these, the last time we met, all those. You used to do it because you know, if you get saved and you find people doing stuff, you continue doing them without even knowing why are we doing all this stuff. So when I came to Mavuno, first of all, that was another problem. People here don't give testimonies. What kind of a church is this?
Oh,
You're
yeah?
supposed to give a
Don't?
testimony, how God has been with you for the whole week. Now we used to just start, okay, we used to have how your week has been, but not exactly a testimony. Now, for once, you could hear people saying how their week was terrible, how their boss did that, how they even felt like, punching. People are real. And I felt, I initially never used to share even those of Nini, but when we went to LG, I became real now. I could tell people how in the office I almost fought with a guy because of this and that. And they would feel me. You could hear someone else saying, hey, I also had the same situation. But initially, if you share that, it's like you are a sinner.
So you were wearing a veil,
Yes.
presenting yourself as a perfect
Yes,
Christian.
yes,
Well,
yes,
in
'cause
reality,
I had never met a real person before. Yes. I came to